Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody. Today feels like a bonus day. We're recording on a not regular day just to kind of cover some time that I won't be available. So welcome to our non-regular day, which might lead to a non-regular podcast.
That's true. We've been having our pre-conversation like we always do. And if you haven't listened to the previous episode with Gil Hodges, like that has stirred a lot of our pre-conversation that we've been having. It was a fun conversation. It's always an honor to have Gil on with us. But we've just been talking like a lot about how our faith is evolving and changing and what we're looking for. And I'm curious, Kim, if you've noticed, have you noticed outside, like I'm going to say outside of the mystical community, people either changing denominations, leaving the church, or like really being dissatisfied with what is going on inside their church? Like, have you had any?
I don't know about recently. Well, I guess I do know I know some people who are at a place like that. And I would almost say, I don't know that it's dissatisfaction with their church, but kind of a drawing and knowing that there's something more. However, I also know most of those people that I know like that don't know what the more is and are just kind of looking for it. Like, I wouldn't even say it's not like church shopping.
Yeah.
But it's like, I know there's something more. I know this isn't it. And as far as I know, as being done in a decently honoring and respectful way, not like, screw you guys, I'm out or something.
Right. Yeah. I've been having this conversation with Bree a lot, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand too, but like, really just like kind of being curious about what Christianity should look like moving forward. And one thing I think is fascinating is I'm seeing a draw from like friends that I know, but also like social media personalities that I follow who have, in their search for what it should look like, kind of went through a phase of like leaving it all together, exploring whether it's new age or just any other anything else, and then winding up going back to kind of a more traditional setting than like the evangelical Christianity Western church type thing. And I was telling you a story about like I just had lunch with a friend, and it just sort of randomly came up. We were mostly talking about like our golden days of flying airplanes together. But we ended up like at the end, just kind of in a passing comment, talking about like, he was like, oh yeah, I went back to a Catholic church. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Like I've been looking into some, not necessarily Catholic churches, but just like wanting to experience some other churches that I haven't been as familiar with. And in the past few months, like probably at least 2 or 3 people that Bree and I follow on social media have been like really promoting and talking about like they started going back to more of an Orthodox type church. And I just think it's fascinating that there is there's a searching for that. And in the searching, people are kind of going back to an older, more structured thing that we left. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on here is balance.
Mhm.
And it makes me wonder, like, like many people left the Catholic Church or some of those more structured churches because they felt trapped and suffocated, and then they come to kind of a evangelical church, and there's donuts in the entryway, and there's fun music, and um like Super Bowl parties or whatever, like, but what do you but do you spend enough time there and you leave all of the good stuff that was in the structure? I don't know. It's kind of making me wonder, like, why is there um, what are we still looking for? What haven't we found yet? What is the more? What is the missing piece? What is the thing? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
I feel like a broken record, and I'm just really sorry. I think what people have been missing and what they're seeking is relationship.
Mm,
And I think it is like the true relationship with the Lord, and they go out and they seek. And I also know that there's some people who don't even know that that's a possibility, and they may just be like church shopping. Like, what is it that fits what I need right now?
mm,
Which is fine for whatever. That's fine. But I think more of what you're talking about tends to be the seeking of the relationship.
mm,
And I tend to believe that when you are under the cover of a religion that says you can only do this and you can only do that and nothing more, it can really stifle the ability to freely seek. And so I
mm,
think that's why you see such an exodus out of some of these organized churches, and especially some of these that are very more traditional. But just like we also talk about a lot, there's this whole process of going up the mountain and coming down the mountain,
mm,
right? So going up the mountain is seeking. You are actively going and looking for something. You
mm,
get to the top, you find essentially the oneness with the Lord. You are communing with Him. But on the way up, it's not the easiest journey. And you have to strip some things off to be able to get there, you know? But then when you're coming back down the mountain, sometimes you can pick those back up. And I think that's why then you see the reemergence back into the more traditional, because then the religion isn't stifling and it isn't holding you down. It is, you already have this very firm foundation and solid faith and relationship to then have these practices built upon, as opposed to having these practices hoping that you'll realize that there's a God, and I think that's a very different paradigm. But if you're asking why I think that's happening, that's why I think that's happening. And I do think that people are really starting to seek the realness, um, and not just a regurgitated version of what faith should be, or what religion should be, or what church should be. Those kinds of, I think people are starting to have to experience that themselves.
that makes me think a bit of, like, most of the Christian mystics that you can find, that you can read about, that have these wild experiences of visions or levitation or whatever it may be. Like, the majority of them were inside of a structured church, majority the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
um, and what I think is interesting is maybe they were part of that because that was the predominant church at the time, but also they didn't leave it. And I think that's what's really intriguing, is they found freedom to be within that, um, and still operate the way they wanted to. And I think that's one thing that my experience in the Western church has discouraged, people walking out their faith differently
Yeah.
than the way the church has done it. Um, and I think that's part of what we're looking for in this like relationship. Like you're looking for, I don't want my relationship to look exactly like your relationship. It shouldn't. Like that would be wrong. And so yeah, I don't know. There's just something in me that's like really curious about about this seeking that I'm seeing people doing again, because I think to some extent there was this desire of seeking, and then like oh my gosh, we found it, this is so good. And then after a while there's this seeking, and maybe part of that's human nature, and I think that's honestly that's what drives innovation, that's what drives evolution, I think, is like this desire of saying, oh, like I think it could be a little bit better, it could be different. And maybe that's what's like, I mean, I've definitely seen like a spiritual evolution since I was a kid. Like the way the majority of the earth believes and functions is different than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, that we keep pushing the ball forward, or pushing the ball, like movement. Like don't let it just get stuck.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. And you know, we've even been talking about like staying agile, in staying youthful, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and being able to live longer because you're staying agile in your mind and in your body. Um, but also I think that's kind of part of faith
Mm-hmm.
is when you start to get stagnant, even when a big people group starts to get stagnant in faith, like they're just circling around the same thing over and over again without any movement in any direction. I think that's when you start seeing people essentially fly off that merry-go-round and branch off and start seeking again. But I think it's important because I don't think that, I don't think spirituality or faith or Christianity or God for that matter is a static thing. I think it by nature needs to continually be moving.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's right on. Like this this energy in movement. Like energy is movement. Movement is energy.
Right.
And this is something like, this is slightly off topic, but it's connecting in my mind with like the different, um the ways we pursue different belief systems. Um like I think diversity and differences are actually a really good thing. Um, and it's like even within a marriage, within a relationship, like I think you need it. And the best example that I've ever heard about that is like, to have a battery, you need a positive and a negative charge. Like that's what you have to create energy, or to hold energy or to use energy. Like you have to have a positive and a negative charge for it. And um, that like you can get so far apart that it's um, counterproductive. Like it doesn't work. Um, it's destructive in the energy that it creates.
Mhm.
But you can also have an opposition that creates this friction, that creates this energy, that creates this movement. Um, and I think like when I'm thinking about like people going from, just to use an example, like an evangelical church to a Catholic church, like they're getting this polarization, and it's creating this energy. It's creating this movement each time they bounce back and forth within that system. And each time they do, there's something that they needed in it. Like, you know, when when a lot of people leave the a really legalistic structured church, they're leaving it because they feel trapped. And then they get in this place that's big and open, and they're like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, like there's something there that isn't here. And
Yep.
what is it? And what am I supposed to do with it? And that, I think that bouncing back and forth, that movement is what creates the growth. It's the going up and down the mountain, the back and forth. Like it's experiencing the polarization. Like there is almost nothing as different from being on top of the mountain, fully one with God, and being on the ground, fully in your body. Like those are such differences, but they're not dissonant. Like they don't fight against each other. They're just different. And it creates that movement of up and down and back and forth. That's creates this energy and this growth.
Hmm. Do you think that there's ever a point in which you can hold both fully?
Yeah. You mean
Like
like the up and down?
the up and down, or like the peak and the valley at the same time? Can you hold both the extreme positive and the extreme negative charge at the same time without having to fully be one or the other?
I think you can. Um, but what I find myself doing is trying to fit that into my human experience box, and it doesn't work.
Sure.
Um, and so, yeah, I do think it's possible to hold both, but I don't think you necessarily experience it the way we might think experiencing both would.
How so?
I don't know if I have like great words for it. I think being fully in your body, like to use this example, being fully in your body and fully aware of the oneness of God at the same time, um, is possible, but it might not happen in your conscious mind where you feel both at the same time. Because I don't think your nervous system, at least at this point, is developed to the place where it can be aware of that. And maybe the trip back and forth happens in milliseconds, and so um, it doesn't necessarily feel like a trip back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but I don't know that. Um, I just don't know that the physical body's nervous system. I don't know that it was made for um, to handle that. And I don't know. I don't know that answer. I do think it's possible to get to a point where you're walking in both, but I don't know if it will ever feel quite like what we might want it to feel like.
Hmm. I just think about um like the examples in the Bible of people who didn't lose their physical body
Mm-hmm.
to ascend, and even Jesus coming back with a transfigured body. And then even in some of the books that we've read, like we've talked about this book a million times, the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East.
Mm-hmm.
um and how it is almost as though it is a choice. It's like I hold it all and I'm choosing how to use it at this moment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about them, and like their bodies are fully working with them for
Yeah.
even the wildly spiritual, crazy, mystical things. I would still call them mystical because I don't have them figured out. Okay. Right. But the things that, I mean, it is traveling hundreds of miles in a millisecond. It is manifesting food out of seemingly nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It is calming a war simply by emanating love.
Right.
I mean, I think there's something in that. And especially if we think about that calming war simply by manifesting love, like just embodying that. If we go back to the conversation we had last week about that kind of pure energy of who God is, and being like love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be pretty much fully embodying that energy to then pour out on others. So then I just wonder, but then their bodies aren't destroyed in the process. So I tend to think, well, I know I'm not there. I know I'm not there yet. I know I'm
Yeah.
not fully there. I know there are pieces and parts of me that, I come into oneness and it is glorious.
Mm-hmm.
And um but I know that I'm not residing there all the time. And but I don't know that I can rule it out as, I don't know, kind of like I'm not going to be able to run a marathon right this moment because
Right.
I haven't conditioned my body to be able to hold that kind of stress and activity. But does that mean I never could? I don't I don't think so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And I do think that type of like your body being fully in it is totally possible. But even in the like biblical things of people getting to take their bodies, they're still only in one or the other spot at one point on a linear timeline. Or in the master's book, like their body is fully with them, but they're not fully in both places at once. And I think that's what I mean by like the way I think it's designed.
What do you mean both places, I guess, then?
Well, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it being too separate. I guess what I'm thinking of is like, okay, Jesus who gets a resurrected body and he goes to heaven, he comes back to earth, he goes back to heaven, um, or I mean, goes to hell, comes back to earth. um, like uh, he he still was physically in one or the other of those places at a time, and maybe his awareness he could see there, he could feel what's going on. Um, and I think that's what I mean by one or the other. But I do think like your statement about like the body being fully with you, like fully on board with what's going on, fully bought in. Like I think that is like that for me is like the biggest goal that I think a person could achieve, because that's a house divided against itself not standing. That's like that is full oneness of having every part of your being um, in alignment, in agreement with what you're doing. No.
Hmm.
Does that answer your question at all?
No, it
Okay.
doesn't.
I think yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're just not understanding what we mean by it, but
I think
um,
so, but that's okay.
yeah.
I do want to say before we wrap this up, because we need to wrap it up. But in all of this talk of going up and coming down with the mountain and everything, we do have a giveaway for our listeners.
We do.
So if you will go to Instagram, I'm just going to say Instagram, Josh.
That works.
Let's forget Facebook for a minute. Can we do that? Is that fine?
Sure.
Okay, go to Instagram, find us at market.mystics and enter the giveaway. We're giving away a t-shirt. It is pretty exclusive. Like these
There's
are
only one.
there is only one and no one else on the planet has one. So yeah, go do that. And we just want to kind of, I don't know, send something out there.
Yeah. We just wanted to do something fun, some type of a giveaway, and we had an opportunity to play around with some new designs. So we're going to do that and give one away.
Like, yeah. Okay. Well, go do that. And then we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.